All right, I still see a lot of empty chairs, so I just expect people to be running in any second. So I am here today to tell you that UDL for me has become really personal. And these are my 4 kids, but I'm not here to talk about my 4 kids today. I'm here to talk about my daughter, Aylin, who's 7. And Aylin is probably the coolest person I have ever met in my entire life. First of all, she is wildly artistic. So she did some home tattooing the other day. I came home and she's like, will you take a modeling picture of me with my tattoos? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, do you want to know where they are that you can't see? I'm like, nope, I don't. Okay, but she's like super into art. She loves drawing, she loves painting. She can make an art project out of anything. The other day she was taking things out of the recycling bin and I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm doing an art project. And I said, but that's recycling. And she said, no, it's art. Okay. She's also one of the grittiest people I've ever met in my life. So this is her in a little kid's Spartan race, which was a half a mile. And she's like, I'm not doing the half a mile one, I'm doing the 2-mile one. I'm like, honey, that's pretty long. It's for kids that are older than you. And she's like, I'm doing it. And this is an adorable picture of a face just full of like grit and power. And she's also a big person of compassion. And so she loves babies and bugs and animals. And this next picture is one of my favorites because one day the kids are all playing outside and the doorbell rings and my husband's like, what's the doorbell ringing for? And so he goes to open up the door and he's like, Katie, you deal with it, and walked away. And so I walked up and I was like, what are you talking, you deal with it? She had somehow gotten a squirrel to come and be domesticated by her. Okay, so she loves school and she loves hanging out with her friends, and her best friend is James. And James is a wild creative boy. He loves to play tag and run around all the time. He only eats 4 foods because when he comes over to our house, Aylin prepares a buffet of cut up carrots, cut up apples, goldfish, and yellow Oreos. And they are as thick as thieves. And here's the thing. Aylin has significant ADHD. She's angry, she's irritable, she's sometimes dangerous. And James has Fragile X syndrome and a severe form of autism. And they are best friends in a classroom with 21 other kids. And I refuse to stand by and allow a world where they are not educated together. And so Aylin and James and her twin brother Brecken and 20 of their friends, they go to school every day and they stay in the same classroom and they learn different things in different ways and they collaborate in different ways and they sit in different seats, but they love learning together. Now, a great story about James is he was on the playground, and as I said, Aylin's a bit impulsive at times, and James was on the playground and some girls were asking him, why are you doing this? So Aylin sees it across the playground and comes in gangbusters and says, hey, if you guys want to mess with someone, why don't you mess with me? Okay, now we talked about maybe that's not the best course of action. Okay, but she is all in for James. So his mother actually sent me this picture last week after we had a little dinner date for them, and she said, out of any picture I have ever taken of James, this is the happiest I have ever seen him. Now, the reason I'm saying this is personal is because those children are not disabled. And if they go to school and they don't learn, that is the problem of the school and the classroom and the curriculum and the furniture and the pedagogy, but those kids are not disabled. And so I was empowered before, but now I'm ready to fight. And so my question is, if we believe that all kids should be educated together, okay, that schools are disabled and not children, then why isn't every classroom in school in this world accessible and engaging to all students? And that has led me to research on something called the diffusion of innovation, which is this concept that just because an idea is so obviously the best idea ever, it doesn't catch on sometimes. And right now, we're all sitting here as the innovators. And 2% of the population, when they hear about something great or when they see a problem, they want to fix it. They go out and they innovate. And those people are able to get some early adopters. Now you're looking at about 15% of people who are really open to new ideas. And then you have an early majority. And I have a story about how long it takes to get from being an early adopter to an early majority. And it has to do with lemons. So imagine for a second that it's back in the 1400s and we're all sailors. So Vasco da Gama, in his first trek to India, had 160 men on his ship. And by the time he got to India, 100 of them died and had to be thrown overboard. Now, we now know that they died of a vitamin deficiency called scurvy. And so years later, all these captains are really concerned about these men that they're taking out to sea because so many of them were dying. And finally, a captain, his name was Captain Lancaster, he started thinking about what are ways that we can prevent and treat this illness. And so he decided he was going to do a little research, a little peer-reviewed research, I guess you could say, before there were ethics. And they had 4 ships, and one ship, he said, I'm going to give every man on this one ship 3 teaspoons of lemon juice a day. And then the other 3 ships, I'm just going to let them go. Now, the treatment ship, who had 3 teaspoons of lemon juice a day, every single man survived. Of the 3 remaining ships, there were about 280 men. Halfway through the journey, more than half of them had already died, been thrown overboard, and they had to merge the ships so the men with the lemon juice could take over the other ones because they didn't have full crews anymore. The research is so obvious that you need to provide these sailors with lemon juice or some other citrus to address this vitamin deficiency. But what ends up happening a lot of times is there's actually something called a chasm that's pretty significant between early adopters and an early majority. And most innovations will never cross this chasm. You'll end up with about 15% of schools or classrooms or teachers who fully buy in, who understand why it's important, are able to implement it with fidelity, and are able to have students who arrive ready to learn. Now, the problem is so many children fall into that chasm right now. And so we are at a really, really critical tipping point. Do we fall into the abyss? Do we throw men overboard? Or do we fight to get across that bridge? And the diffusion of innovation says there is really only one way to fight your way over. And it has to do with the type of people who are those early adopters. And so we're going to do a little experiment. So Brian told you that I'm an education consultant and an assistant superintendent, and I told you that I'm a mom. But I also had this little band once called the Black Eyed Peas. Yeah, you can zoom in at my face. That's at the Grammys. I'm sorry, the American Music Awards. And I'm a little Novak-licious there. And so here's what we're going to do, okay? I'm very, very inclusive, and I want to give you some options here. But we're actually going to throw a little party here. And you want to know why? Because tonight's UDL Block Party, right? And so as the Black Eyed Peas say, I got a feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. And so I feel that way too. And I want all of you to feel that way. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little excerpt of this song. And so we're gonna split the room in half. So if you're on this side and there's lyrics up, you're actually gonna do the part, tonight's the night, and then you're gonna do parentheses, okay? Let's try it out, ready? Tonight's the night. Hey. Okay, let's try it again. Tonight's the night. Hey. Okay, everybody stand up. Okay, now, deep breaths, stretch it out. Okay, so the lyrics are up, we're ready to rock. Again, I'm sorry my bandmates couldn't be here right now, but I promise you that I will be able to deliver it for them. So what we notice right now is, okay, we're up, we're innovators, we're ready. Not everybody loves to dance and party. So I have planted some very special people in this audience to ensure that this party goes off without a hitch. So DJ, Get ready if you want to do any la 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 la, la 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 la. Ready to play the video.
That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel it. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. I feel tonight's the night. Hey, let's live it up. Let's live it up. I got my money. Hey, let's spin it up. Let's spin it up. Go out and smash it. Like oh my God. Oh my God. Jump out that sofa. Come on. Let's get off. Fill up my cup.
Let's go. Up.
Look at her dancing.
Move it.
Just take it off. Let's paint the town. We'll shut it down. Let's burn the roof. And then we'll do it again.
Okay, I need movement.
Let's do it. And do it. And do it. Let's live it up and do it. And do it. And do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Do it. Here we come. Here we go. We gotta rock. Easy come, easy go. Now we on top. Feel the shot. Body rock. Rockin', don't stop. Round and round. Up and down. Around the clock. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Friday, Saturday to Sunday. Get with us. You know what we say. Party every day. Party every day. And I'm feeling. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That's
Gonna be a good night. Okay. So what just happened? And why would we all be up dancing and clapping? And it comes down to this concept of diffusion of innovation, which is actually called the law of diffusion of innovation, which says that most people don't want to cross the chasm. And so the reason I chose singing and dancing is because it's something very obviously that people are like, I publicly don't really want to do that. But there were people out there, and it was funny because I could kind of read the room, is as Brian and Louie and Liz, as they were spreading out, what was happening is the people around them started joining in. And that really explains why some organizations can cross the chasm. It's called the law of the few. When you have your early adopters and your innovators, they cannot cross the chasm alone. They have to be one of three types of people. Now, the first is the maven. Now, the maven, if you're a maven, you want to know everything there is to know about Universal Design for Learning and the outcome for students. You're a researcher, you're a writer, you want to know the information so you can share the information. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, are you sharing enough? Because there are 85% of educators in this world who are still on the other side. So you have to publish more. You have to research more. You have to blog. You have to get that information out. Because I can't tell you how many times that I go somewhere to present about UDL and I say, well, tell me what you want to know about it. What are your outcomes? And they say, what does it even stand for? Okay, now we're here thinking like, this is a huge thing, everybody is doing it. I can tell you that not everybody is doing it. And right now, the teachers who are doing it have sailors that are just lucky to get the lemon juice. And everyone else is in this horrible control group where the kids are thought to be the problem and the kids are thought to be disabled. And we are allowing too many of them to fall in that chasm. And so our mavens have to get that information out. Then we have our connectors. Our connectors know everybody. They can introduce you to people. We can start connecting this to other frameworks. We can start connecting with other schools. And social media and the world makes connecting so much easier. I looked on Twitter, there's the same people that I know are on Twitter, but like, how often do we really try to reach out? To Skype with other educators, to join Twitter, to join PLCs, to attend conferences. And then lastly, you have your salespeople. And these people are going to fight and are going to push this, and they will not accept no for an answer. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about my UDL journey and how I ended up here, and it's because of a maven and a connector and a salesperson. My maven is David Rose. And I first learned about UDL by hearing David Rose speak. He was the maven. He was the informational think tank that said, I just want to share this message, whether it's through publishing, whether it's through presenting, whether it's through professional development. Okay, it's all about the information has to be seen. It is wonderful if you internalize it. But what you are is you're a treatment group right now on a ship of really lucky students. My connector is David Gordon, who I'm convinced probably knows everybody in the universe. So he's the director of publishing at CAST. Every time I bring up an idea, I'm like, oh, you know what I'm really interested in? Like, what does UDL look like in like prison reform programs? Oh, I have like 6 people. I'll send you their emails. Like, what? Okay, today I'm here. As I'm walking around, he's like, oh, meet this person from the Department of Ed. This person's from Michigan State. Okay, he knows everybody. But what happens is he makes my UDL world bigger. And all of us have to do that for each other. And then my salesperson is my co-author, Dr. Kristen Rodriguez for Universally Designed Leadership, who will never take no for an answer. And she asked me when I was a 7th grade teacher, and she was my assistant superintendent, to get trained in UDL during the summer, to take 2 weeks away from my new baby. And I said no, like 10 times. And she just kept saying, no, like you have to do this. You have to do this. Believe me, this is the best thing for your students. It's the best thing for your district. Okay, so I want you to think for a second, who are you going to be? Because right now, this is the law of the few. And if we aren't willing to communicate and inform and connect and fight and sell, we will not get over the hump. It'll be something written into legislation that everybody says they're doing, and kids like Aylin and James will be put in corner rooms away from their peers because they are broken in the eyes of many systems. So turn to someone right now and tell them, who are you going to be? Are you going to be a maven? Are you going to research harder and write more? Are you going to be a connector and start reaching out to other people who are doing this well and share videos of your practice and make the world smaller? Or are you going to get out there and sell this through professional development, through coaching, through your own leadership? Take 30 seconds and make a commitment. Go. Okay. So we as innovators and early adopters cannot be passive. Now, what's really interesting is how long does it take to go from early adoption to early majority? And I'm going to go back to the ship, because although Captain Lancaster came back and said, this is the cure, all of my men survived, and replicated that study many, many times, it took 150 years for the British Army or the British Navy to agree that it was an effective antidote. And another 40 years for the entire world to realize that was an antidote. And once we got to the laggers, scurvy was completely eradicated with 3 teaspoons of lemon juice. And so how do we bring this together? How can my sweet daughter end up not another like cog in this system? Okay, how do we sell? How do we fight? How do we make sure that all kids are together? Is you have to want it more than falling in the chasm. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with today is this concept of, if I am around districts where they are excluding children, where they are saying that children are disabled and segregating them, I want all of you to stand up and say, The kid is not the issue. If you're gonna mess with someone, you're gonna mess with me. Thank you.